Hello, fellow humans. I stand before you tonight deeply honored, incredibly humbled, and statistically flawed. Tonight, I'm accepting this prestigious award for a perfect GPA. But as someone born in the late 1900s, a phrase I find both technically accurate and wildly offensive, I know that every tragic hero has a fatal flaw. Mine is a 3.96. Semester after semester, my transcript was a beautiful, unbroken chain of straight A's. I was invincible, like Icarus, who must have believed he was destined for greatness as he soared higher and higher towards the sun. I also never saw the fall coming. Then, 2 days before the semester ended, I logged into American literature and discovered my lofty dreams of American dream would not come to pass. Fellow classmates, the American dream died on Tuesday evening at 9:28 p.m. when I received my first B+. Suddenly, I wasn't just reading the scarlet letter, I was wearing it. Only my letter wasn't an A, it was a B+. The plus sign is just a cruel mathematical mockery, a tiny cross marking the grave of my perfect 4.0. I spent hours analyzing the narrator in Edgar Allan Poe's The Black Cat and the destruction he left behind. First he killed his cat, then he killed his wife, and just when I thought he couldn't possibly do any more damage, he claimed one final victim, my 4.0. But I'm not here to complain. A 3.96 taught me true humility. It taught me that perfection is an illusion, mostly because Dr. B is both the nicest human being and the meanest grader. And apparently, my writing needs to make sense to other people, not just myself. Without that B+, though, this would be an acceptance speech for a 4.0 GPA, and that would have been far less entertaining for you. Of course, no achievement this statistically close to perfection happens alone. There are many people, personality traits, unhealthy coping mechanisms, and unresolved psychological issues that I need to thank. First, I'd like to thank my trauma for making me so funny. I could definitely not give this speech without it. I'd like to thank my ADHD for allowing me to complete 8 hours of work in 45 minutes, provided, of course, that I spend the previous 7 days avoiding it altogether. I'd like to thank my anxiety for convincing me that anything less than an A is a personal emergency. And, of course, I'd like to thank my perfectionism for turning every 10-point assessment into a doctoral dissertation and making sure I retook every test until I got 100, because we all know that 96 is just unacceptable. I'd like to thank every assignment I confidently believed would take 20 minutes, only to discover 3 days later that I was, once again, wildly optimistic. I'd also like to thank 11:59 p.m., which is the official time that everything was due, and the approximate time that my eyes started to bleed every night. I'd like to thank online classes for allowing me to pursue higher education without having to ever find a place to park or wear shoes. I'd like to thank the submit button for asking if I'm sure. No, I'm never sure, but we both know the deadline is in 3 minutes. I'd like to thank my imposter syndrome for consistently reminding me that I probably fooled everybody at MWCC, especially Kara Roach, who let me into the Commonwealth Honors Program. Speaking of Kara, she's also my next professor for my next literature class, so this acceptance speech may need an update after this next semester. I'd like to thank my first college friend, Lindsay, for physically pushing me into the honors program. Lindsay, I love you, but I also hate you for enabling me. I'd also like to thank my handsome husband, Brian, for listening to me cry over homework, and instead of reminding me that going back to college was my terrible idea, he simply tells me how smart and pretty I am and that I can do anything. I'd like to thank my dogs for providing emotional support by basically sleeping at my feet peacefully while I do all the work, and then reminding me when it's time to walk away and get some fresh air, or when it's lunchtime because they stare at me until I notice. I'd like to thank my entire family for learning that I have just one assignment or one question left has absolutely zero to do with the relationship to the time I will be finished. I'd also like to thank my nieces, who are far too young to understand what a 3.96 GPA is, but they will absolutely believe that this fancy certificate is a very big deal. And honestly, that's the exact kind of support I need in my life. In all seriousness though, this 3.96 represents so much more to me than a number. I returned to college at 44 after being away from school for nearly 2 decades. I did not return knowing if I would succeed, I returned because I finally believed I deserved the opportunity to try. And you guys know I really wanted to swim. I'd like to thank my sobriety because returning to school and discovering what I'm truly capable of would not have been possible without it. I also want to thank the version of me who returned to school at 44, even though she was beyond terrified. She had no idea, whether she could do this. She just finally decided she deserved the chance to put herself out there and try. So tonight, I accept this award, not for being perfect, but for being perfectly imperfect. Thank you, Dr. Cogswell, and all of my classmates for watching, for all of your feedback, for your encouragement through the semester, and for giving me one last opportunity to turn a 4-minute assignment into a 6-minute speech. And besides all that, I'm better at math anyways, and we all know that a 3.96 rounds up to a 4.0 anyways. Have an amazing rest of your summer, guys. Thanks so much.